Water, life's most basic necessity. From the moment we are born, we rely on this compound for the most essential activities in our daily lives. But for thousands of Palestinians, this basic compound has been weaponized by the Israeli government, forcing innocent citizens to learn to live without the very thing that keeps us alive. The Israeli-Palestinian conflict has culminated in thousands of Palestinian refugees living in the Israeli-occupied West Bank. Since Israel occupied the West Bank in 1967, it has controlled Palestinian water resources through discriminatory water-sharing agreements that have prevented Palestinians from maintaining or developing their own water infrastructure. As a result, thousands of Palestinians are unable to access clean water and have become water dependent on Israel. This has had startling repercussions, particularly for the agriculture industry.
We used to farm this land. Other Palestinians used to farm the plot next to ours. The Israelis came and closed the wells. People left because of limited water access. If there's no water, there's no life.
The pump house that once provided the village of al-Uba with water has long been shut down, its walls daubed by Jewish settlers with graffiti. When this and dozens of other similar water pumps were working, some 350,000 Palestinians lived in the Jordan Valley. Now only some 60,000 remain. 250,000 people have been driven off their lands, the primary weapon used in this forced eviction, the control of water.
For the remaining Palestinians, water shortages have become a part of life, a harsh reality that has shaped the way that days are spent and life is planned.
This is one way you know it is Wednesday at the Mahmoud family's home in the village of Rafat. It is one of a few days a week that water flows from the taps. Family members, 15 of them, rush to catch every precious drop on Wednesdays before the taps go dry for several days. Intifar Sabri Abu Hassan hurries to bake all the week's bread.
On that day, we bathe, we wash our clothes, we wash dishes, we cook, we flush toilets. These are human needs.
The Mahmouds live above the mountain aquifer, which is shared with Israel and its settlements in the West Bank. A World Bank report says the average Israeli gets 4 times as much water than the average Palestinian.
This conflict exists at the intersection of geopolitics, identity, and environmental racism, a complex problem surrounding an essential human right. So what has been done to address this crisis? Previous solutions to this wicked problem have proven to be either inaccessible or unsuccessful. In fact, Israeli policy has only exacerbated the issue, especially on the Gaza Strip. In Gaza, communities are forced to purchase clean water in bulk, yet economic hardship have demonstrated this is not a feasible approach, and most definitely not a long-term solution.
Water from Gaza's taps is unsafe to drink because it contains dangerous levels of chlorine and sulfate. But Nahid says Israel's 10-year-long land, sea and air blockade has made people so poor. Many can't even afford to pay for his company's better quality water.
Our business is down up to 60%. People can't find jobs, and many of them tell us they can't afford water. They say one day when they get money, they will pay me back.
Lack of money has forced Gaza's municipality to halve the services it offers. Many people use water supplies at mosques where the filtering is more efficient.
As indicated in the Oslo Agreement in 1995, the Palestinian demand for water was to be met through extraction from the eastern basin of the mountain aquifer. Yet due to political tensions and technical deficits, the plan was not pursued, and Palestine grew increasingly dependent on water from Israel. However, Palestinian authorities are neither powerful or wealthy enough to afford or negotiate with the Israeli National Water Company. In the West Bank and Gaza, every bulk water purchase puts the Palestinian authorities in further debts to Israel, only exacerbating their dependence.
Israel has also severely restricted the flow into Gaza of equipment and supplies.
Of course, you have special.
Uri Shor of Israel's Water Authority says seemingly innocuous supplies for infrastructure, cement for instance, are often diverted. Others are weaponized.
If they will want to bring in Gaza something that might also be turned against Israel, as building rockets or as building canals, of course we have a problem with that.
The standoff has greatly hindered efforts to address the water crisis. Back in Gaza, this $10 million desalination plant, built with European aid, is the first installment in a large project to bring clean water to the Strip, but fuel and electricity supplies, controlled by Israel, allow it to operate only about 4 hours a day. A large solar array that could fill the gap sits idle because cables to connect it have been held up at the border, says Gaza Water Authority Director Monter Shoblak.
Without a real cooperation and coordination and approvals between Palestinian Israelis, and especially the approval of the Israeli, this project will not be materialized.
But a lack of water in Gaza is not the only issue.
Authorities have also attempted to mitigate this issue with desalination pumps provided by the European Union. While this expensive endeavor desalinates the water enough to make it suitable for agriculture, this desalinated water is not fit for human consumption. Furthermore, if the electricity and other key imports and resources remain under Israeli control, the water remains still under their control. This prompts the question, how can this problem actually be solved, and who should be in charge of solving it? While technical and infrastructural solutions have been recommended, the outcome of previous solutions demonstrate that the root of the problem is not technological, it is political.
There are serious violations of international law that are being committed by the restrictions that are being imposed on the access to water, which the Palestinians face. So the measures that we as Amnesty International are recommending that Israel takes in allowing greater access to the shared water resources for the Palestinians, and that it lifts the restrictions that are currently imposed.
Diplomatic policy focused on stopping the Israeli blockade and control of resources is a necessary first step. For any desalination effort to be feasible, Israel must stop their manipulation of electricity in the Palestinian territory. If Israeli forces surrender control of Palestinian goods and electricity, more meaningful advocacy can be directed towards finding sustainable solutions for the shortages. International governing bodies must set both short and long-term goals. For the most basic survival and rudimentary guarantee of human rights, short-term goals for desalination and sewage projects must be implemented. Long-term goals, however, raise more existential questions about the legitimacy of Israeli and Palestinian states on disputed land. Furthermore, organizations like the ICC must address the illegal Israeli occupation and militant negligence for Palestinian human rights much more aggressively. It is only when the Palestinian people are seen as a true nation can peace be actualized.